you find working within dentistry can be overwhelming, challenging, and often draining? Do you feel lost and unsure where to go? Yet, you want to achieve your best and do your best. What would finding your world of dentistry make you feel? What would feeling fulfilled and inspired every day give you? What would the experience being rewarded and appreciated for what you do make you feel? What would working with a team that is inspired, together, and consistent give you? What would that step-by-step growth to limitless brilliance, day by day, in every way, no matter who you are or what you do, make you achieve? Because that is what we want, to help you find your growth. Because your brilliance is limitless. We want to do this because we care. We want to connect you to the right people who share the same hunger, the same pillars, and the same willingness to support you in your journey and celebrate your success. We want to help you define a pathway for your next stage of limitless brilliance. We want to give you the capability and skill through the power of learning, through both our huge online library of resources and the hands-on courses. We want to give you the ability to find the right place to truly unleash your potential and express your excellence. We want you to pause, reflect, and transform because we care. We want your business and team to grow. We want you to retain your teams for the long term. We want every member of your team to achieve their limitless brilliance. We want your team to contribute to the success of your practice and business because we care. We want to do this for dentistry every day, day after day, making sacrifices for the growth of the profession because we care. We want to provide support to the Tubules Foundation to build schools worldwide for the greater good of humanity because we care. Whatever we do, your growth, your team's growth, the well-being of the profession and the greater good is at the heart of what we do. It's not about us. It's about your path to limitless brilliance, day after day, because we care. And with that, we warmly welcome you.
Let's recap from the last part. We talked about the two modes of operation, the linear mode, the quest mode. And it's about a recapping of the linear mode. You said it's a set sequence of steps that you follow. If you go from A to B to C to D and you reach this point of success right at the top, that's the linear mode. And it's very prescribed. The methods here are prescribed. They're absolute to get to that point. This is what your career has been like. If you think about dentistry, it's been about graduate, you must do MFDS. If you don't do MFDS, you must go to hospital and do DCT. You must do this training, you must do that training. It's always following that. But actually, your options are so much greater now. And the other thing is you're tested at this point. You're tested at that point and it's success or failure. It's black or white. That's what you get. If you don't pass any of these points, you go back and you repeat the prescribed method. You repeat the prescribed method, right? You carry on. You go from A to B. Let's assume A is graduate, B is MFDS Part 1. You pass it. MFDS Part 2. You fail, you go back and do this again. It's a set of steps that you keep going. And the aim of this linear mode is to reach this defined endpoint, the goal. Whether it's, I'm going to buy a practice, or it's going to be something like, I am going to become a consultant or anything along those lines. Trouble is, this is too well defined. Too well defined. And as a result of this, you're constantly trying to get to the next stage, whether you enjoy it or not, whether you're not sure about it or whether you're sure about it. You're doing what you've been told. That's the pathway. That's it. You're driving to prove how good you are. These points here are all trying to tell you, prove. You're going to be measured on how good you are. The quest mode, a bit different, really. The quest mode, you know, the points are all varied, because what you do in the quest mode is you make a move, see where you are, decide, see what changes have happened around you, and then evaluate, and then make the next move. And then you see what changes have happened around you, evaluate, make the next move. And sometimes you evaluate and the next move takes you down. Or maybe the next move takes you back. Or maybe the next move then takes you up in a different way. But in essence, the recap, the quest mode is really, really all over. That's what you're doing now. The linear mode is reaching this endpoint. The success in your linear mode is reaching that defined endpoint where you have to prove to people. It's about proving that you can reach that endpoint. It's finite, because what next? Like I said in the talk, once you reach this point, what next? Once you reach this point, what next? You do the next linear mode, what next? While the quest mode is completely different. Success in a quest mode is it's the foundation. The foundation of the quest mode is all about success being measured by what you truly connect with. What actually engages you, what interests you, what drives you. Because then you're no longer about proving, but you're about improving. And when you improve, sometimes things will get easy, sometimes they'll get hard, sometimes you'll go up, sometimes you'll go down. But each experience will give you a better understanding of the subject, a better understanding of who you are. It's going to help you grow much better. Now, do you want to prove yourself all the time? Or do you want to improve? And in essence, the more and deeper you connect with this, because if you find something really interesting and you do stuff, that interest will go down, it'll become your passion. If you engage more and more and more. And if that passion becomes better, if you engage more, it'll become your purpose. Purpose doesn't just happen. Passion doesn't just happen. It's first finding something interesting and seeing if you connect and learning. The other thing about the quest mode is when something's interesting, it's a passion, it's a purpose, you truly care about it. And when you care about it, when things get difficult, you will find the resilience, the strength, the real drive to get past it. You see, in the linear mode, none of that exists. You just follow the path. It doesn't tell you when you reach point B or C, what if you've actually grown as a person? What if your values, your beliefs, your strengths have changed? What if the world out there has changed? No, you still do this because that's what we say. This is dentistry all day long. These are the exams that you've been given. These are the competitions you've been following. But Tubulestart competition is about helping you discover your quest. Now, the bit about the quest is you make a move, you evaluate where you are. You make another move, you evaluate where you are. You make another move, you evaluate where you are. And that move that you make each time is the 5 Ps. Because that move isn't just making the growth. Growth isn't just making that small move. Growth is about making that move and evaluating your position for the next move. Does that make sense? Growth is about making that small move, evaluating your position before you make your next move. Evaluate again, make your next move. That way, you're always following the thing you connect with. That way, you're keeping your work, your life, everything engaging, interesting, passionate. That's why you get the spirit and energy. That's what you want to drive with it. Now, the linear mode is because of its premise of the finite endpoint. It's proving your results. That's why they always ask you about results. Do you like it? Do you like the pressure of giving exams? Or do you just do it because you have to prove it to somebody? Hey? You know, it's about and it's not about the method. Because you're aiming for the endpoint in the linear mode, you just want the quickest, easiest, most efficient method to get there. So most of the time, your learning is all superficial, because you don't need to understand something at a deeper level. You know, your learning is at a level where, tell me what I need to do to pass this exam. Tell me what I need to do to get myself successful to composite makeovers. You know, all this talk of success in dentistry about reaching this goal. So you then go and say, show me what to do. What's the path? Copy paste. You just learn at the surface level. But when you're on a quest, after each move, because you value it, because you understand, your learning gets deeper. You're trying to understand the basic underlying principles, the deeper learning, because honestly, to get something that's interesting, passionate, purpose, you need to get to a deeper level, right? This is when things get interesting, because when you understand things at a deeper level, you learn at a deeper level. You learn the underlying principles. So when the going gets tough, those principles, you understand it so well, you can modify what you do for the next stage of your quest. Every single move is properly planned and you can actually execute it. It's like a game of chess. I make a move, I don't know what my opponent's going to do. And I can only plan my next move after I know what my opponent has done. The possibilities are numerous. Chess is still finite, but the possibilities are numerous. But in that chaos world where you're playing real life chess, the possibilities are infinite. Anything can happen. And why I'm telling you about this is that each move you make is those 5 Ps. That's your growth, your evaluation of that. And that's why we've made this into the 5P competition, because I want you to show me how you make that one move, just that one move, properly and really well. In a world of chaos, that's the skill that's going to help you as you progress through your dental career. You see, you can see that chaos already. The National Health Service is shrinking in terms of its funding. As the population in the UK ages, as the working population decreases, that funding isn't going to get better. I will say this, it's not going to get better. If they make it better, I will be well happy for it because it improves the healthcare system, but the government just don't have those funds. They've spent too much money over 40 years. They don't want to admit it probably. That's a political discussion. But as that funding doesn't get better, and the bureaucracy levels in the NHS go rising high, and everyone tells you these are the steps you should follow to get your result, to prove yourself, you're going to end up in a career that, boom, hits a brick wall. In the other side, patients who, have sort of always expected a certain payment system in dentistry now have to pay themselves. They're going to have to value healthcare a lot more. And it'd be your job to build that value for them. And if you can do that, you will get a very successful career in dentistry, not a success, but a successful one that connects to something you enjoy. Because patients who value what you do, you value what you do, all of you are on the same path to this passionate purpose that you're all going to. And the best bit is when you are in true strife and challenges that come your way. They will come through. Right now we are. This linear mode will get you frustrated because you can't reach your expected result. Your expectations of the result you needed and your real condition ain't going to match. You're going to get cynical, angry, frustrated. You see all that, right? Across all the channels. What you want to be is someone who learns from everything. So when true strife and challenges come, when change comes, when uncertainty comes, any of that occurs, you're operating from a success position of thriving. You want to thrive. You want to know that I understand the basic principles and therefore I can grow to the next stage of this challenge. I can get better. I can improve. If you're in that quest mode, the process of making your move, reevaluating, understanding, taking some time, then making the next move, it's going to give you the tools to negotiate the journey of dentistry that you aim to undertake over the next so many years. It might not be dentistry. You might even say, I'm going to go through another career pathway. The 5 Ps will become your basis to thrive in life. That's why we're doing this competition for you. It's not just another competition. It's not just another audit project or case or research. Those things are not about growth. Tubules is about growth. And growth is about understanding the best way to take yourself to the next level again and again and again and again, so you achieve your unlimited potential. You become the person who can soar to thrive to your limitless brilliance. That's where we were going with this. I hope that's given you a bit of a lift. So in this part, I want to talk about the first, a bit more detailed about those challenges we talked about. You see, we talked about 5 things, right, in the linear mode. 1, the problem is presented to you. 2, it's not just presented, but the problem is also framed for you. Then you look for the prescribed or absolute answer, as I said. Yeah? And this is why you look for the prescribed answer. Tell me how I can get from A to B most efficiently, because I need to go up the ladder. I need to get to my success. And then you implement that answer so you can get from A to B. And once you've implemented that and it works, you just repeat it again and again and again and again. And that's a linear mode across there. Now, yes, it's a proven process. Yes, it's worked very well. And like I said in my introductory talk, yes, this will be brilliant because over time, when things were stable, when the world had stable cultures, stable information, stable infrastructure, stable rules, and stable outcomes, this could work because nothing around this was changing. Although you were changing still, but the rest of it wasn't changing. But in this world of chaos, where you're trying to implement this kind of formula of the linear mode, you're going to have consequences. And your brain system has been designed to think like that. You have a Nokia 3310. If you're listening to this, you might not even know what Nokia 3310 is. If you do know, brilliant. If you don't, go and search it. It was one of the first mobile phones. You couldn't even do any WhatsApping on that. You couldn't do any internet browsing on that. None of that. You wouldn't use that today, would you? So why using a Nokia 33 brain to try and negotiate the challenges of today's dentistry? You have to understand everything's changed. That's why the 5P mode has been brought in. And a bit more detailed about the challenges. If you try and operate this linear mode in this chaos world, the challenges, the difficulties, all of that you'll face is what I want to go in next. But before I even go to there, let's just discuss those 5 stable areas. You see, stable cultures, because the cultures were stable, because everybody lived in their silos, everything was predictable, people lived lives where they woke up at 9 o'clock, went to work, had their lunch, did their work, 5 o'clock they came home. All of that stability meant the problems that were presented were always the same, right? Repeated problem presentation. So problems presented in stable cultures is okay. Which is why in the linear mode, they present the problem to you because it's assumed that that's what's going to happen all the time. Now, the other thing that we had was stable information. And because information was stable, they could frame the problem for you. Because the whole point of framing a problem is so you can know what information to go and get. And it took a long time for information to double and grow, but that's happening massively now. The other thing is, like I said in the first talk, the infrastructure was stable. And the reason the infrastructure was stable was because there were not many entities or organizations that were disseminating this information. I told you about universities, purveyors of education, or media companies, purveyors of movies or stuff like that. So you could be told where to go to look for your answers without a problem. But now that information is everywhere, right? That's a big difference. And then, because the cultures were stable, because everything was stable, you could have stable outcomes. Everybody shared in the same outcome. What was right for one person was probably right for everybody else. So when you had the right prescribed formula, you could implement it again and again and again and again. And ultimately, because of that, you could have stable rules. And in stable rule systems, you can repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. So this entire linear mode and this model of success in this stable world, it was saying you've just negotiated that stability and come out on the other side. Winner. That's why everyone goes, congratulations. Those of you chasing dental awards, this is what they're trying to make you do. Instead of finding your quest for interesting, they're trying to validate you. I'm probably one of the few people who says, stop that top 50 in awards, because it doesn't recognize influential people. What it recognizes or is catering to your need to look for success. But if you thrive every day, you don't need somebody else to validate you. If you thrive every day, you find your quest and do something that interests you and become better and better and better and better and better at it. Improve yourself. And as these things change, you're going to have to do that more. You're going to have to grow and improve through a career of whatever you do, which I'm hoping will be dentistry, because you're studying that. You might not, you might change, but it's knowing that that works. Before I even talk about all of that, what we want to look at is the two factors that changed it. Remember, I said it in the first talk, demography and digitization. Completely changed it. Stable cultures disappeared. Stable cultures changed into complexity. And what do I mean by complexity? Well, complexity is where you just don't know what the outcome will be when two entities come together. You see, an example of an aeroplane or a car or a watch is it's complicated. It's complicated means that too many integrated parts. But the thing about complicated is because there are too many integrated parts, it works in too many tandems, but you know what's going to happen. You press an accelerator on a car, you know it's going to go forward as long as the gear is in the right place. So it's complicated, but it'll do the predictable thing. Complex is where it's unpredictable. When two people come together, two groups of people come together, their values, everything collides, you don't know if they will come together and flourish and come up with new ideas or come up with new ways of working, or they'll come together and clash and come up with more conflicts. You don't know. And you don't know if they come up with new ideas. What sort of ideas will they come up with? Because they all carry their individual systems, behaviors, patterns, values, all of that sort of stuff, right? So you have to be so careful about that. Then the stable information changed into highly evolving information. And this is because of digitization. Digitization is where everything is now captured digitally. So it can be processed, it can be spread really quickly, but also it means you can collect all that data together, analyze it, come up with new information which you can use to develop other things. So the information at every level is just rapidly developing. Medical information is probably doubling at a rate of once every 3.5 to something like 3 to 3.5 years. But even that was in 2010. It might be even quicker now. So if you don't engage in growth, if you don't engage in learning all the time, guess what's going to happen? You're going to be outdated very quickly. It's extremely important to make sure you stay on top. We get people saying, I don't have time to learn on tubules. They go on hands-on courses. How many do you go on a year? 5 hands-on courses a year. 6 hands-on courses a year. Those 6 courses are probably equivalent to, let's assume you do 2 days per course, right? 6 courses, 2 days a course. That's about 96 hours in the year. And yet you work, let's assume 4 days a week. Right, 4 days a week and you work for 40 weeks. You're ending up working for something like 1,200 to 1,500 hours a year. If you're looking at, 4 days a week would be something along the lines of, how much would it be? 96 hours, right, in the week. Yes. Well, if you work 24 hours a day like me. Let's assume you work 8 hours a day. You're working 30 hours a week times 40 weeks. Yeah, it's about 1,200 hours. 1,200 to 1,500 hours. But your learning is only 96 hours. Only 10% of the time you're serving patients, you're learning. It should be a lot higher. It should be between the 20 to 25% region. Now you're going to say, but if I take so much time out of work, then I'll never earn any money. Exactly why you need to engage in learning like online resources so you can do it in your spare time. And if you say, oh no, I don't love dentistry this much, then you're not thriving. Rethink again. That is why Success and Quest have a whole different approach. You've got to find the thing you connect with. Now, the information evolving is one thing, but also what has changed there is the stable infrastructure has gone because the underlying architecture has changed. You know, when I say architecture, things like programming languages, different programs, all that has enabled the development of so many different infrastructures. It's given you a huge amount of choice. You can go to get information. The problem now is not the lack of information. The problem now is not a lack of choice or courses. When we started Tubules in 2009, the problem was a lack of information. Now there's so many courses that you can go to, you don't know which one to choose, which ones are genuine, which ones are credible, you don't know. The problem is not a shortage of information and courses. The problem is how to curate that information, how to curate that chaos to find the right courses. And this is only going to get more challenging. How will you find the right course? That's part of this 5P challenge that you're going to show us. And then away from the architecture, stable outcomes became obscure outcomes. And what I mean by that is because society became complex. Every person carried their own individual values. Every person carried their own individual strengths, weaknesses, abilities, patterns, all of that. And as a result of that, what I think is right, someone else may say, oh, maybe I think it's a little right, but another one will say, I don't believe in that. It's not the absolute outcome anymore. It's not the result, because one person might agree with that result, one person might not, based on the meaning they give to it. And you will see this, because you might think you've done an amazing composite, and your patient goes, I'm not happy with this. And you think, what? I've done everything right. Because they're putting a different meaning to it. And to understand how to get around that obscurity, you're going to need a different skill set, not just implement directly. You know, before you learn something and you implement it. That's what you've been taught. I'll show you how to do a class 2 composite, prescribed answer, and then you implement it. And you follow the same process. And when you do that, you won't be able to challenge obscurity. I'm going to tell you about the consequences in a short while. But what we want to do is go over all of this stuff first. And the final bit is the stable, we've talked about stable outcomes and obscurity, but the final bit is the stable rules have changed to sanctions and substitution. Sanctions are bureaucracy and rules. Substitution is where they will find cheaper alternatives. If something you do is repeatable, it can be automated. Anything that is repeatable will be automated. Anything that is simple will be substituted because more people will be able to do it. Anything that's repeatable and simple will probably be substituted and automated at the same time. So just think about that. Let me scan some teeth, let me send them off, and some clean check will sort it out and repeat it. You will soon be substituted if you don't engage in growth. And the rules will get more complex for the things that are more difficult because there's so many people with more outcomes. As you grow in your career, the complex thing will have more rules, the simple thing will have more substitution. And if you don't grow, if you don't engage in improving yourself to a level beyond that, you will end up in a position where you might wonder, why am I being substituted? Why am I being devalued? And NHS dentistry is at that point where NHS dentists cannot give the best to their patients because the system has devalued them. Just think about that. You don't want to end up in the position where so many colleagues are now wondering what to do, where they're stuck in this black hole. And while healthcare is important and many patients can't get access to this healthcare and dentistry has become pricey, we all have to think beyond that. We all have to think of creative solutions because that has happened due to the sanctions and substitution process. if we're not careful, operating in this linear mode, which most of dentistry is operating in this new chaos world, is going to end up with consequences. That's why you need the 5 P's of growth. What are these consequences? Let's look at those in a bit more detail. If you use this linear mode in these chaos chaos situation, what are going to be the consequences? That's where we will go next. Consequences. We talked about the 5 changes. Now, if you operate in the linear mode, remember the problem was presented to you. So all you did is your brain switched to solution mode immediately. Immediately you want to solve any problem that comes to you. Any exam question, oh, I've got to answer it. Any other issues, let me look at that. Right? Now what happens there? In a complex world, when things are coming together, there's so much unpredictability and there's more and more problems coming at you. Now because there's more and more problems coming at you, you go into react mode because you're answering or looking and saying, I need to solve that, I need to solve that, I need to solve that, and before you know it, your day gets ahead of you. You do this all the time, right? Where you end up in this react mode. And before you know it, it's a long day and I haven't got anything I needed to do done. You've responded and the day's gotten ahead of you, right? How many times have you had that? See, there's 3 things here. So many problems are coming, and number 1, you don't have the ability to identify problems. Number 2, all these problems are coming and you might be able to identify them, but you don't know how to triage and prioritize them. You don't have the skill to triage and prioritize. And as more things come to you, you're even stuck more. And perhaps you can triage and prioritize and go, that's the problem I need to work with, or that's the problem I need to work with. But what you end up with is you don't know how to evaluate those problems. Evaluate them to know where exactly the issue lies. And so what happens? You can't identify problems, you can't prioritize them, you can't evaluate them. And all you end up doing is pretty much responding to everything, reacting to everything. And you end up in a react mode. And that's why you never have the time to be able to grow and develop in what you find most important to you. Let's just assume that you actually do find the ability to identify problems. That's great. But there's a second thing that happens. The second thing that happens is that in the linear mode, problems have been framed for you. The way they've been framed is they've been questioned, and the questions have been put in a certain order. And the way a question is framed is the way a problem is framed. Why do I keep getting difficult composites? Is a different question to how or what do I do for difficult composites. Why you keep getting difficult composites will take you to us trying to find information for reasons why this is happening, while what do you do will take you in a direction to find the steps where this is happening. It's a minute difference. Can you see that? The power of your questions is the power of your focus. And what tends to happen in this case is that because the problems have already always been framed for you, one, you don't know in highly evolving information world, but even if you can find the problem, you can't frame it. So you're unable to frame it. And then even if you're able to frame the problem, remember, in that mode of linear thinking, you're always in a mindset of direct me to the information, direct me to the information. So you can't filter it. You can't filter this information. You take everything. I know the problem now. I've framed it. Why do I get this? Oh, this tells me why. This article tells me why. Oh, this course tells me why. Because you can't filter it, because you don't have the skills to go, okay, I need to find this information or this. That filtering isn't there. You're under influence. People influence you. Oh, go on this person's course. Best course I've ever been in. And people do that on social media a lot. I don't know if it's the best course they've been in or they've been told to say it's the best course they've been in. How do you know they've not been, I wouldn't say coerced, but influenced? You need to make independent decisions. You need good filtering skills. So once you've framed your problem, you find the right information. But let's just assume you can frame the problem. Let's just assume you can really, really filter the problem pretty well as well. So you can evaluate that information is what I need, that course is what I need. You need to be able to evaluate the source as well. The source of information. See, it might be the right course for you, but if you want to do deeper learning, who and what is delivering this course to you? And is that source trusted, credible, all of that? How much years of experience they've had in providing that information? What are the processes they put in place to ensure that information is high quality, well looked after, all of that? It's when you can develop these skills that you can actually go on the most powerful journey of your learning. Because otherwise you get so much information, all this information coming at you, you can't frame it, you can't filter it, sometimes you don't know the source, and you end up on the wrong course. And you go, oh, spent so much money. And you end up in the wrong thing and you give up and you start looking elsewhere, and before you know it, you get distracted. You're in proper distract mode. And then we said the next step here is, the answer is prescribed in the linear mode. Now we've had a massive change of architecture. And with that big change of architecture, there are so many sources where you can find your learning. And here you need a really good, powerful awareness of your own patterns. You see, my patterns, for example, are that I have a very short attention span. But I can't sit in a lecture because of that, because after a few minutes of listening to the lecturer, I go into reflective mode. Attention span isn't the fact that I just listen to you and then I go somewhere else. A short attention span could be that you listen to one thing and you start making so many connections in your head, you go into reflective mode. So for me, I need to absorb information a little bit at a time, process it, make all the connections, take a little bit more, process it, make all the connections. Nobody tells you about these learning patterns that you have. But I had to figure this out myself. Some people can really focus for a few hours. They can focus. These are people who just absorb information, absorb it. The processing happens quickly. While for me, the processing takes time. As a result, I need to figure out what's the best right infrastructure that fits that. But because you've always been prescribed an answer, this is the textbook you must read, this is the place you must go, what do? You don't have the ability to find the right infrastructure. So the inability for the right infrastructure doesn't come to you. This is another reason why you're really influenced. Go on this course, go on that course. And then the most important bit is not just about the right infrastructure. Because here you'll have spent a lot of money, invested in some infrastructure, and then gone, this is not what I expected on this course. Now you wasted a lot of money, wasted a lot of time, wasted a lot of energy, and now you have to recover that money, time, energy, so you have to work more or do more things, and now suddenly, look at how much you're overwhelming yourself. Then you need to also have the skills to develop the right learning. The right learning is so important. I told you, in the linear mode, as everyone went step to step, just give me the most efficient strategy. I'll copy paste it. Tell me what to do. I'm going on this one's course to do something. But the right learning isn't doing something. The right learning is learning in a few areas and making deeper connections to understand the underlying principles and framework to what you're doing. You don't just ask about what you're doing. You go down and understand why you're doing that. And once you do that, you go to a much deeper, powerful level. But the right learning is just another thing to keep in mind. You can't find the right infrastructure. If you can't do the right learning, you cannot make the right concepts. And it results in limited skills and ability. Right? So the limited skills and ability means you can't adapt. That happens elsewhere. And as a result, like I say, with all that, you have to recover this, you get overwhelmed, you get inundated. You go into an inundate mode, completely inundate mode. And in this, it's actually just two things: right infrastructure, right learning. Now, then we're looking at obscurity. I said there is no absolute right or wrong anymore. Everything is grey. Some things are 50 shades of grey. But what's happened here? You've been told once this answer is prescribed, just repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. But it doesn't let you allow or adapt or flexify or modify what you're going to implement based on this situation. Right? And this obscurity, not being allowed to learn how to adapt something in obscurity, has resulted in three things. One is poor decision making. You make poor decisions. This is all you guys, I'm doing class 2 composite, I'm going to do it. I'm taking an extraction. Okay, take a luxator, pull the tooth out. But you don't look at the context. You don't look at who that patient is. What's the patient's state, emotional state, physical state, thought process, meaning-making state. You don't look at your team around you. You don't go, are they in a stressed position? Are they not? You don't look at yourself, your own awareness. Am I in my optimal sort of situation to do this? It's not just what you do and the dentistry you do, it's everything else around. And all everyone ends up doing is, I'll go on this dental course and this dental course. I'll go ear course. Your ear course doesn't take you anywhere, because each move in your quest needs that small step of growth before you do the next stuff. Unless you have lots of money to waste, go for it. Right? The poor decision making here is one of the things that happens. Now, when you make that poor decision because you haven't assessed everything, there's a good chance that you might get the outcome you want and someone else doesn't like it, and next thing you know, you get despondence and conflict. And when you get despondence and conflict, it's because patients don't agree with you. Your team member doesn't agree with you. And in that conflict, look at how much happens. Some dentists have gone through this conflict. And the worst bit here is that then you start thinking about short-termism. Because in the long term, you can't apply the same formula again and again. In the long term, you're evaluating. Because the linear mode was so focused and outcome-based, you always wanted the result. And I've got to get to the result fast. While the quest mode is, let me make my process. Let me make what I'm doing better because it interests me. It's about improving yourself after each little step. But in the linear mode, because you want to get to the result fast, you think, how do I get there fast? And you think short-termism. And in that short-termism, the damage you do to the long term isn't sin. And you end up in a frustrated mode because you're not getting the outcomes you want, short-term or long-term. And as though that's not enough, you sort of go in this stage here now, because you've been told, here's your problem, here's been framed, here's your answer. This was rather than implement, sorry, not repeat, you implemented that answer. And then you were told in the linear mode to repeat it again and again and again and again. But now you've got sanctions and substitution happening in the complex world. And if you're going to just repeat what you're doing, guess what? You'll just end up in all sorts of chaos, because number one, you've not been told how to evolve. You can't. You don't have the inability to evolve. And when you don't have the ability to evolve, to grow, to go, take yourself to the next stage, repeat UDA, repeat UDA, you just get devalued. You get devalued. That inability to evolve leads to devaluation. Because what you're offering is no longer something that only you can offer. Remember, substitution comes in. There are other people who can do the same thing. Where there was one person who could, offer Invisalign, they want everyone to get to diamond status. It's in their vested interest, not in the interest of the patient to be able to do this. So you get devalued. And when you get devalued, soon you'll get substituted enough that you get irrelevant. And that's why you become outdated. The consequences of working in the linear mode in this new chaos world are you will react, you will distract, you will inundate, you will frustrate, you will outdate yourself. And then you'll get cynical and go, it's everyone else's fault. But if you want to thrive for the long term, you need a different operating system in the mode of the quest system, in the quest mode of operation. That'll help you identify problems, triage them and evaluate them well. That'll help you frame your problems, filter the sources and understand the sources. It'll help you build the right infrastructure, the right learning to build the right concepts. It'll help you overcome poor decision making in each situation. It'll help you avoid conflict and despondence and avoid this short-termism quickly getting to results. And ultimately, you will be able to evolve. You will be valued, be relevant, and actually become much more important. Because the consequences of thinking in the linear mode are that you pretty much end up in a place where you wouldn't know where to go next. And our entire system is encouraging you there. With Tubules, I'm going to try and make you go a different way, which is why we've introduced the 5P competition. Now, let's go in to actually say, what's the new way of thinking? That's what we'll go into the next video. Thank you. When you consider how certain people operate in this chaos world, they don't use the linear mode of thinking because that linear mode of thinking results in consequences, which we have seen. They operate differently. I went round thinking of situations where we can see this, of environments where you can see the chaos really showing up. One of the places where it happens is the National Health Service hospitals. Over there, the massive changes happening in a big organization show you the CHAOS. There's complexity. There are people from so many backgrounds around the world working within that system. There are patients from so many backgrounds around the world who come in there. And this is particularly in certain parts of the country. The information within there is just evolving all the time. Medical technologies are evolving. The information related to how you treat patients is evolving. Data and all of this is evolving. And the way that information is coming at you is from every angle. The healthcare professionals in the NHS are no longer just working from papers in a single magazine, papers. It's coming from online. It's coming from online videos. It's coming from all sorts of discussion forums, experiences being shared in different groups, conferences. The architecture's changed, the options. And then there's obscurity. Because there's so much complexity, the right for one person might not be the right for another. What the demand or expectations of one patient are may not be the demand or expectations of another one. And that's the obscurity there. And then they do have a lot of, I call it sanctions, but a lot of rules. It's a complex layer of bureaucracy. And also some jobs are being spread out to people where they cannot find the high level personnel. In that NHS system, when you look at how the doctors operate, it's slightly different. They counter complexity not by waiting for the problem to be presented, but they counter complexity by a process of selection and prioritization. They actually look at all the problems and go, which one should we solve on first? They counter the highly evolving information not by waiting for the problem to be framed, but by building that focus, by framing themselves, by building that focus themselves. Framing and building the focus themselves. They know there's multiple avenues of information coming through there. It's very difficult. So rather than waiting for the answer, they work out their best way of learning. They find their sources. They counter it that way. They even build their own platforms, some of them. Right? They're doing that. And then, in essence of the right implementation, this is perhaps the best thing. They don't just implement, they look at the context, understand the situation, understand what resources they have, what team they have, what people they have, what equipment they have, what are the patient expectations, what is the emergency there, put it all together and do a contextual implementation based on trust. That's the way they're going. And ultimately, when you realize all the sanctions and everything coming in, they don't just repeat what they do. They are constantly engaged in a process of learning, in a process of growing, in a process of staying one step ahead. They're in a process of regular growth. That's what they're doing all the time. And my story I gave you was that as well. Each time I was finding a problem, framing it, learning about it, deeper learning, contextually implementing it, and growing. That's what I was doing. And this is what you have to do. You are going to have to do this. This is the quest mode of operation. It's a query to select your things, understanding the challenge you have in that area so that you understand how to go through it, educating yourself in the right way, developing the right education in there. And once you have got the right education, you've got to implement it, situational implementation or contextual implementation, and every time you've got to transform and grow. So it's QUEST, which is why we've called it the quest mode. Each time, do this and quest to the next step. And when you do that, you will find yourself growing in dentistry. Now, in tubules, we've called this quest mode the 5 Ps of growth. The query or the selection are your pillars. This understanding to build, framing, and focus is going to be creating your pathway. This getting the right education is your power of learning. Then, the situational implementation is about your place, and the transformation or the growth is about pausing. Just stop and go where you go next. And this competition is all about you doing those 5 Ps step by step. I hope this has been useful, and what we are going to do next every week is go through those 5 Ps. Week 1, you'll develop your pillars, follow the video and write it down. Week 2, you'll develop your pathway. Week 3, you will tell us what power of learning you undertook, how you undertook it. Week 4, you will implement this or show us an implementation in your workplace. And week 5, just pause, transform, reflect, and say, what's your next quest? Those 5 steps is what you're going to submit to us as part of your competition. I've gone over all this in detail after the first video so that you understand why we're doing this, where we're coming from, and why it's important for you. I hope that's been useful for you. We will move on to pillars next week. Thank you.
Cut. I like that sign off.